Hello everybody and welcome back to another Doctor Who product review. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at a rather exciting Doctor Who release from the BBC Books series, and that is Doctor Who and the Daleks as originally written by David Whittaker as a part of the Target Novelisation series. But this time we have a 2022 regenerated edition featuring illustrations by Robert Hack exclusive to this book release, alongside an introduction by Neil Gaiman. This book is available to order now from the usual retailers which stock Doctor Who books, including online and physical bookstores, and the recommended retail price is around £25, although most stores tend to sell Doctor Who books for a little bit cheaper. Now, as most of you will know, Doctor Who and the Daleks certainly isn't a brand new Doctor Who story. In fact, this publication first came out way back in 1964, and it is of course the Target Novelisation of the original TV serial. Now, this was of course the first ever encounter with the Daleks in Doctor Who history, featuring William Hartnell as the first Doctor alongside the original TARDIS team, and it is really exciting to see this story have brand new energy and life breathed into it through these excellent illustrations. One thing that I am going to get out of the way immediately is of course one of the main selling points of this book is the brand new artwork and illustrations by Robert Hack. Now, what I'm going to do throughout this review is that I am going to show some representation of the illustrations in very small detail. So I'm going to take a look at some close-up shots of some of the artworks, and where possible I'm going to try my best to avoid revealing entire pieces of the artwork. So that means that there is a lot for you to discover personally if you decide to pick up this book for yourself. Of course, there has been so much care and attention to detail put into bringing this book to life. I think that is the only fair thing that I can do as a reviewer, keeping the vast majority of the contents of the book confidential, but at the same time giving you enough as a viewer to kind of decide if you want to purchase this book or not. So if you already have Doctor Who and the Daleks as a Target Novelisation, then you essentially already have this book released. But what we have this time round is basically every other page features a brand new and exclusive illustration by Robert Hack. Starting off at the very top of the front cover, we have the inclusion of the latest variation of the BBC logo, as well as the 13th Doctor era logo with the white typeface really standing out. Of course, we now have a new Doctor Who logo. It wasn't implemented in time for this book release, however, no doubt we will see it on various BBC books in the future. Just underneath this we have And the Daleks. This has been given a lovely golden embossed finish, really making it stand out and making the book feel rather special. And then of course at the very bottom we have a few more credits for the 2022 edition, including Robert Hack, who has illustrated the entirety of this book and really has made it something special. You also have an introduction by Neil Gaiman. Of course, it's very exciting as well to have a very popular and well-known writer doing an introduction for a Doctor Who story, as well as of course being a Doctor Who writer himself, of course creating episodes the likes of The Doctor's Wife and Nightmare in Silver. As for the central artwork itself, this has in fact been taken from the early half of the book, so this exact piece of artwork does feature within the story itself. It's not an exclusive cover art or anything like that, but it really does capture the dynamic of this book, I think, and the energy that it has, especially the way that the Daleks are presented as these very sort of dominant, threatening alien creatures. Something of which that you do kind of have to get used to is the different interpretations of the likenesses of, say, the Doctor and the various companions. You get the gist of who they are, and I think that Robert Hack has done a really good job of reflecting their personalities within the illustrations. I think in particular here you definitely have that sense of the first Doctor's age, but also that rather excellent costume. There is so much detailing within this, from the checkered trousers, the waistcoat, the cravat, the monocle. It looks superb. But in summary, for the front cover of the book, I think it looks superb. I mean, for those of you who are very much obsessive collectors of the Target Novelisation series, yes, it doesn't look like a Target Novelisation. It doesn't have that cream background that you come to expect, or an artwork that looks familiar to the likes of Jeff Cummings or Andrew Skilleter's work, or Chris Achilleos. Instead, we have Robert Hack doing his own thing, and I think that that is the perfect thing to do for this book, because it has so much artwork on the inside, which follows the same style to this. So it definitely represents the theme of the book in a really accurate manner, and to be honest, on this occasion, even though it doesn't look like a Target book, it definitely works. It's a celebration of Robert Hack's work and ultimately the effort that has gone into bringing this adventure to life. Turning the book onto its side now to take a look at the spine, I absolutely love this little inclusion. At the very top, we have the Target Novelisation logo. Of course, a logo which means a lot to a lot of Doctor Who fans, and it's great to see this logo still being recreated on very modern looking Doctor Who books to this day. A great little touch and a lovely reference to Doctor Who's novelisation history. The spine of the book is certainly quite visually striking, so we have a continuation of that Dalek there coming around to the side, as well as Doctor Who and the Daleks finished off with a lovely golden embossing, really making it stand out. And the base of the spine reverts to a simple white typeface, once again including the writing and illustration credits, as well as stating that this is a BBC Books release. For people who collect hardback Doctor Who books quite regularly, or any hardbacks for that matter, you will know that due to the inclusion of the dust jacket, you do sometimes get a little bit of a bend in the centre here, which can be a bit annoying, but you can kind of spread it out ever so slightly. It's certainly not a big problem, although something which certainly to watch out for, especially if you are buying this book from in-store from the likes of a bookshop. Flipping around to the back of the book now, I absolutely love the fact that the illustrations are taking main prominence, because after all, that is the main selling point of this 2022 book release. So we don't have a description for Doctor Who and the Daleks, instead we just have the main image, as well as a little quote there towards the top. So it's really striking, really bold, and again, really lovely and colourful. Again, something of which really makes this book feel quite special is that the quote has this lovely golden embossed finish. It makes the product feel like a celebratory piece. It definitely makes it feel like a more premium Doctor Who book. So we have a lovely description there from Ian Chesterton himself, kind of describing their first encounter with the Daleks. Speaking of the first encounter with the Daleks, here is Ian Chesterton having quite a bad day, getting his legs basically blown to smithereens. Again, a lovely way to kind of pair the quote with the illustration. This is of course taken from within the story itself, it's not exclusive to the cover art or anything like that. Without saying, if you are someone who really likes Dalek illustrations, then this book is certainly for you, because there are so many varied angles and positions that the Daleks are presented within, making them look very visually striking, very threatening, especially when compared to that description as written by David Whittaker. For those of you that collect hardback books, this will be very familiar to you, but basically all of that description that you usually expect on the back of the book is this time encased within the inner sleeve. So we have a little bit of information about David Whittaker as a writer, accompanied by brief introductions to Robert Hack as the illustrator and Neil Gaiman who introduces the story, with a little bit of company information and pressing details at the very bottom. As for the opposite side to the dust jacket, we have a lovely little illustration of William Hartnell as the First Doctor. Little story synopsis that you would usually expect on the back of a Target novelisation. And then a great touch, and again something of which that you also expect on the back of a Target book, is we also have the airing details for the story itself, saying that it was first broadcast on the 21st of December 1963 to the 1st of February 1964, and it was of course originally published in that year as well as a few other details about the casting of the story itself, including the Doctor and the companions that we see throughout the episode. Given the rather special celebratory nature of this Doctor Who book release, I'm unsure if it is actually exclusive to the hardback format, but with that in mind, I do think it very much suits hardback. I think especially with the illustrations, it's a lovely book to be able to flick through. I think perhaps a paperback version will still be nice, because naturally it's exactly the same contents, but I think the fact that it is hardback makes it more special. Coincidentally, I have been reading quite a lot of hardback books recently, and something of which that I've got into the habit of doing is whilst reading the book I take off the dust jacket simply so it doesn't get damaged, because normally when you're transporting the book around you can get the odd dent here and there. With this being a collector's piece, I definitely recommend doing that. Naturally, of course, if you were looking for a softback release, as always with Doctor Who books, and what it tends to be really, is that the hardback comes out first, and then the softback is quite a number of months away. So if you want this book soon, then this will be your only option. For those of you that have had the pleasure of reading a Doctor Who Target novelisation in the past, you will kind of get the gist of what the book is about, because we basically have the TV Doctor Who serial from 1963 and 1964. However, a number of amendments have been made to make it ever so slightly different to that of the TV serial, so it's great for variety, because you are essentially experiencing the same story but told in a different way, especially in the case of this story being told from Ian Chesterton's perspective. Especially when you pair this alongside the actual illustrations which populate the entirety of this book, it does definitely create a different experience when reading this story, very much like how you have those differences between the initial TV serial and the Peter Cushing movies. I have no doubt that there will be people watching this review who have already read the Target Novelisation for this story, and for those that have, then you know exactly what to expect. But I think if you haven't, this is a really exciting way to experience the story for the first ever time, very much like how I did through reading this book. I think it would be fair to say that it's been a rather unusual year for Doctor Who and the Daleks, receiving a little bit more attention to usual, as recently I've also watched the Peter Cushing movie adaptation as a part of its 4K 2022 Blu-ray release. It was a great product and I really enjoyed revisiting a movie that I previously first experienced as a rather young Doctor Who fan. I love how both the Cushing movie and this book act as a standalone story, essentially opening with a new chapter on Barnes Common, which crams the meeting of an unearthly child into a mysterious car crash that brings the TARDIS team together. It's a very unconventional, non-consensual way of opening the story and plummeting these humans into time and space and a far-off alien world. I think that magic is a very big theme throughout this story. It does feel very surreal, and especially due to the way that the story is delivered, it does very much feel like the beginning of something very exciting. Another big difference with this story is that it's entirely told from Ian Chesterton's perspective, as if he's almost writing the events down within a diary as he experiences them. Although this gives the other characters ever so slightly less attention by having everything through Ian's eyes, it does add a very human element to the story. I really do like how the First Doctor is portrayed in particular. He's shown as this rather magical, unknown figure, as if he's playing some sort of game or test and not letting anyone else know the rules. Especially in the early chapters, this causes lots of tension and really makes the TARDIS, the Doctor and Susan feel very alien and yet very powerful, especially within the early interactions within the TARDIS console room, which does very much feel like this vast spaceship that above all, people actually live in, which I think is something that Doctor Who often loses. Within this story, we have the likes of the food machine, living rooms, an area where Ian can shave. It does very much feel like an actual inhabited spaceship. The presentation of the book overall is absolutely stunning. Every other page has some form of illustration, from small props, little picture scenes, or even entire page artworks, sometimes even expanding out onto a double page. The art itself doesn't really directly mimic the TV story, but it has its own vibrant style. The pictures aren't just slapped between the text occasionally, but instead it feels like a lot of care and attention has gone into framing and positioning the text to coincide with the arrangement of the artwork, and subsequently the reading experience flows in a really natural, pleasant way. I also really love the representation of the characters within each picture, but also the contrast in the locations. You really feel that vast alienness of the TARDIS, the clinical environment of the Dalek city, and the vibrant but decaying shrubbery of the Skaro forests. There is in fact also a subtle pattern which is applied to each page below the text itself, which reflects the location of the chapter. This is a great attention to detail and makes each page look unique. This may include a rather subtle pink undertone to reflect the scenes within the jungle, or even a lovely roundel design to reflect the scenes within the TARDIS console room. The Barnes Common intro in particular is a perfect way to introduce the story. It looks beautiful, cold, wintry, and very atmospheric. Robert Hack has been incredibly creative when it comes to making the story look a tad more graphic and impressive when compared to the TV production, detailing the Dalek mutants, the swamp creatures, and the general set design to make the story feel a little bit more grander than the 60s production. The portrayal of the action sequences and explosions also looks stunning, using colour and bold line work to create lots of impact and making each scene look incredibly dramatic. The drawings themselves aren't basic or dull, but have a great care to make each page look consistent. I can in fact be quite picky when it comes to illustrations, but with this book I instantly warmed to the style. I feel like Robert Hack really has put his entire heart and soul into the creation of this book. As a result, it really does feel like a proper labour of love. I like the fact that the main selling point of this book is the artwork, and if you are purchasing for the artwork, then you are definitely getting your money's worth. It's not one of those picture books that you purchase and basically you get 10 pages and maybe an occasional piece of artwork thrown in. I think that the balance between text and imagery is absolutely perfect, and as I said, definitely worth the recommended retail price. What I will also say is if you are a fan of Barbara, we do have a little bit of development of Ian and Barbara's relationship, which was kind of subtle, I think, I suppose, within the TV story. Within this book, we have a little bit more focus on that, and them kind of trying to establish this relationship in rather unusual circumstances, but at the same time, due to the story being told from Ian's perspective, we don't particularly hear too much at all, really, from Barbara. She's a rather silent character throughout the entire story, going along with the mission, and essentially we get a little bit of content here and there from her, but no matter what, it does really tend to be sort of provoked by other characters and interacting with them. She's certainly not one of the boldest characters of the story, which is a little bit of a shame, but in a rather unusual way, neither is the Doctor. I think Ian is very much the focal character of the story. And finally, a little bit of a note on the Daleks. They are, of course, weird things to draw, and one slight misangling of a section can entirely break the design and make it look wrong. But the Daleks within this book are superbly drawn, looking very detailed and menacing, especially as life becomes a little bit busier. One thing that I have noticed when it comes to reading Doctor Who books, or any books really for that matter, is that you tend to just whiz through them, and the sole aim is to kind of get to the end of the book, as opposed to actually appreciating the events within the story and each chapter and seeing the story progress. And something that I definitely recommend doing with this book is taking your time over it. It's roughly only around 200 pages long, and naturally, of course, due to the images being blended in there as well, it means that content-wise, there isn't too much. I'll probably say maybe 150 pages to be a little bit generous. So if you are someone who reads at a fairly sort of regular speed, you will get through this book considerably quickly, but what I recommend doing is slowing down, appreciating the artwork, and walking through the story and taking time with each page to look at the actual artwork itself and the location and the characters, and ultimately appreciating this book for the main reason why you've purchased it, to be able to see this story freshly illustrated and I suppose reimagined. I am really glad that I've gave this book a chance because it really is something special. It's very celebratory, very exciting to read, and it's also lovely to see a Doctor Who book that has had so much love put into it, and it's a story of which that is very different from the TV serial, but it's really brought to life through Robert Hack's work. So there we have it. That is my review of the 2022 edition of Doctor Who and the Daleks, as written by David Whittaker, featuring beautiful, unique and exciting illustrations by Robert Hack. In summary, I really do love this book. It's something incredibly special, very celebratory of this 1960s Doctor Who serial, but also fundamentally reminding me of what Doctor Who was back in the day. Its very early origins, its first few adventures and steps out into the universe. It's very exciting to be able to revisit this story because it just returns us back to our roots of this time traveller, this very mysterious time traveller roaming around the universe with his granddaughter and two people that he's essentially kidnapped. As for the actual book itself, I think that I'm going to refer to this as the double dip dilemma, and I might start using that in reviews because that is something that as Doctor Who collectors we need to deal with on many occasions. If you've got this book already, does the artwork justify a double dip? And I think that if you like what you've seen throughout this review, then yes, definitely. But equally at the same time, from a contents perspective, you no doubt already have this book in your collections. If you're someone who feels very strongly about the artwork, then I definitely recommend picking up this book release. It is an excellent high quality product. The paper is beautiful, it's very glossy, it's very high quality, but also at the same time a lot of care and attention has gone into making each page something special and exciting. You may have noticed on the Host Productions that I've kind of stopped reviewing books over the past few years. I've kind of started to only review the ones that really do pique my interest, and this is one of those books which definitely does. So I do definitely recommend it. Maybe add it to your Christmas list for this year, or certainly keep an eye out if you see it in your local bookshops and maybe have a flick through, and no doubt after seeing a few pages you'll probably end up taking it to the checkout. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular Doctor Who themed content. Have a nice day. I shall see you all next time.